Woo! There they go. Bonnie and Clyde. Those little rascals. As you can see, I'm here, quote unquote, on set in the real life location. I'm located in Pilot Point, Texas, and this is where they filmed that famous bank robbery scene. In fact, Pilot Point, Texas is where they filmed a lot of the 1967 movie Bonnie and Clyde. They did film around other areas of the Dallas area as well, but a lot of it was in Pilot Point. Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, came out in 1967 and is ranked as one of the 100 greatest films of all time by the American Film Institute. We're going to talk about what made the movie so good, what made it so iconic, how it is one of the main films to really influence Hollywood into its new Hollywood area that dominated Hollywood for 2 decades. I'll discuss a few things that I liked about the film, some things I didn't like, some of the historical inaccuracies that caused the producers to be sued and settle out of court, and a few behind-the-scenes fun facts. And some of the facts aren't so fun. There's a few things about Clyde and Bonnie that the film left out. A not-so-fun fact is that Clyde's first murder victim was his rapist. All right, I'm getting wet. It's raining. I'm going to go back to the office. Okay, I'm out of the rain, I'm all dry. To be honest, I filmed that intro like a month ago, so it's been a while. I went and rewatched that intro prior to filming this, and I got surprised at the end hearing about Clyde's first murder victim. So I won't leave you hanging. I'll go ahead and explain that right now and then talk about the movie itself. So early on in Clyde and Bonnie's relationship, they were captured and sent to separate prisons. Clyde was sent to Eastham Prison in Lovelady, Texas, or near Lovelady, Texas. And this was a farm prison, so all of the prisoners were subjected to brutal farm labor under the eye of pretty sociopathic guards. But the hard labor was the least of Clyde's worries. There was another inmate named Ed Crowder who was serving a 99-year sentence for bank robbing. He was 6'2" and significantly heavier than the 5'7", 150-pound Clyde Barrow, and he sexually abused him for close to a year, about 11 months. And finally, Clyde snapped. He could not take anymore, and he lured Ed into the bathroom and beat him to death with a lead pipe. However, there's a third inmate relevant to the story named Aubrey Skelly, who was friends with Clyde and also hated Ed. He took the rap for Clyde because Aubrey had a life sentence. So he was friends with Clyde. He wasn't going anywhere anyway, so he took the rap for murdering Ed Crowder, and Clyde didn't get any additional time added to his sentence. The worst of his troubles over, he still had to deal with the awful conditions of working on the farm under the prison. So to get out of that, he concocted a scheme to chop 2 of his toes off, which he did, and it got him out of work. Ironically, he was released on parole just 2 weeks later, so that's why he walked with a limp the rest of his life. So that was in February of 1932. 2 years later, he and Bonnie returned to the prison and staged a prison break and released 5 prisoners, one of which was one of the Barrow gang members. So why am I focusing on this story so much before I talk about the movie itself? Because the film never mentions it. It completely skips over all of Clyde's abhorrent experiences while he was in prison. And I think the reason why they skipped over it is important to how I view the movie. In skipping over these events, the director is more able to portray Clyde's character as less of a hardened character shaped by awful experiences and more of a fun, misunderstood outlaw. Okay, that's enough of that for now. We'll come back to it later. But let's talk about more tasteful aspects of Bonnie and Clyde, like their robberies and murders. Let's talk about the movie. Bonnie and Clyde is the 1967 film. It was directed by Arthur Penn, produced by Warren Beatty, who also is the actor who plays Clyde Barrow. Faye Dunaway is the actress who plays Bonnie. We've talked about Faye Dunaway before. She was in the movie Chinatown, which I've already done a video on, and is relevant to Bonnie and Clyde, but we'll come back to that connection later. The supporting cast is phenomenal. Gene Hackman, rest in peace, he plays Buck Barrow, who is Clyde's older brother. Estelle Parsons plays Buck's wife, Blanche Barrow. And then Michael Pollard plays C.W. Moss, who is a composite character of 2 Barrow gang members, W.D. Jones and Henry Methvin. Henry Methvin is the Barrow gang member who was in Eastham Prison that they went back to break out of jail. And then a surprise addition to the cast that I was not expecting to see was Gene Wilder, who I pretty much know as Willy Wonka. I think a lot of people think of him as Willy Wonka. But Gene Wilder is in this movie as Eugene Grizzard. And interestingly, this was his very first role in a film. in a full-length film. And there's a little bit of an interesting behind-the-scenes fact about Gene Wilder's character as it relates to the real-life experience. But we'll come back to him in just a moment. Blanche Barrow, let's talk about her for a moment. Blanche is really the only member of the Barrow gang that doesn't really want to be there. And she is portrayed as a easily panic-inducing, hysterical, crazy lady. And there's an interesting dynamic between Blanche and Bonnie. Bonnie is really kind of antagonistic towards her. Bonnie is like the cool, calm cat, and Blanche is the hysterical lady who screams at the drop of a hat. Warren Beatty, the producer and also actor who plays Clyde, before filming took the screenplay to Blanche Barrow, the real-life Blanche Barrow, to see what she thought of it and to get her approval. Well, she did give her approval. She liked everything that she saw, but she was not asked her opinion on the rewrites and edits, particularly about her character. So when the real Blanche Barrow went to go watch the movie in 1967, she nearly died of embarrassment after seeing herself portrayed as, quote, a screaming horse's ass. So this is not the only problem as far as real-life characters being portrayed in this film. We talked a little bit about Clyde's horrible experiences not being portrayed. Blanche Barrow didn't like how she was portrayed. And then thirdly is Frank Hamer. Frank Hamer was the legendary Texas Ranger who was tasked by the Texas governor to hunt down Bonnie and Clyde. He was actually in retirement. He was semi-retired, and then Bonnie and Clyde went to the Easton prison and staged a prison break. And that was the event that drove the Texas governor to ask Frank Hamer to come out of retirement and hunt down the Barrows. And he did so. He staged that famous ambush and killed Bonnie and Clyde. That's not how he's portrayed in the movie. In fact, the film isn't really kind to him at all. He is really portrayed as a bumbling fool. He is easily caught by the Barrow gang, and he's humiliated by them, and it does not do the real man justice. And that's what his family thought. So Hamer passed away in 1955. The movie came out in 1967. His family watched it, did not like it, and successfully sued Warner Brothers for defamation of character for an undisclosed sum out of court. So it really, some of the main thoughts I have here is that there was quite a few liberties taken with how real life people are portrayed in the film, and it's an interesting balance between fact and fiction. But we'll come back more to this later. It really underscores the power of film, doesn't it? How it can rewrite someone's legacy in popular imagination, and it's not just entertainment, it has real consequences to people's lives and their descendants and how they're viewed. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. There's a darkly funny, but also eerie detail about Gene Wilder's character, Eugene Grizzard. So Eugene Grizzard, his character sees his car stolen by the Barrow gang. He doesn't realize it's the Barrow gang at the time, but he chases them, catches up to them, and they kind of kidnap him and force him to go on a road trip with them. And they actually hit it off. They're having a real good time. It's actually quite funny. It comes out that he is an undertaker. And Bonnie appears to be superstitious, and she immediately wants nothing to do with him after knowing what he does, and tells Clyde to kick him out of the car. So they leave him, they keep his car, kick him out in the middle of nowhere, and that's the last we see of him. So allegedly, in real life, there's a little of an interesting detail here. So Eugene Grizzard's character is based off the real life man H.D. Darby, who was an undertaker in Louisiana. One day he was having lunch at a diner in Ruston, Louisiana, when he happened to look outside and see that his car was being stolen. So H.D. Darby borrowed a friend's car and chased after them. He caught up to them, and they kind of apprehended him and had a little fun with him. Got to talking to him, and it turned out that they found out that he was an undertaker. And allegedly, Bonnie made the joke that she hoped that he would be the one to take care of their bodies when they were dead. Allegedly. Well, the ambush that successfully killed Bonnie and Clyde was near Sales, Louisiana. And guess who was called to take care of the dead bodies? H.D. Darby. Kind of eerie, and I'm not sure why that wasn't included in the film. You would think that would be included, but you would think that would be some poetic ending. But no, they didn't include it for whatever reason. Okay, let's talk about the film's most famous aspect, the violence. It was pretty shocking for 1967. Over the course of the movie, what started out as two young lovers having fun and cavorting with friends and having just a great time, making easy money, quickly, increasingly, becomes less cartoonish and more violent. This is where the film's controversy comes in. Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, was one of the first movies in Hollywood to show graphic violence in its entirety. Up to this point, a lot of the films showed a gun being shot and then the victim screaming, clutching the back, and then falling over dead. But in Bonnie and Clyde, director Penn changed that. Lots of slow motion, lots of blood spurting out, lots of slow motion close-ups of bodies being riddled with bullets. I mean, he really puts a focus on it. In particular, the final scene is the most shocking. Penn used multiple cameras, lots of slow motion, and you can really see the whole gang and car being just riddled with bullets, and it's prolonged and graphic in a way that audiences just had not experienced up to that point. The majority of professional reviewers were aghast and roundly condemned the film for its sophomoric, unnecessary violence. But the audience loved it. It was something new and fresh, and they ate it up. They kept on coming back and spending their money, and that's what really mattered to the studios. So this really marked a new age for Hollywood, and that's kind of what it's called. The stage from roughly the 60s to the 80s is called the New Age for Hollywood, and it was started by Bonnie and Clyde. The movie earned 10 Academy Award nominations and renewed public interest in going to the movie theaters. There had been a decline. Penn and Beatty's combination of humor and graphic violence, while not showcasing traditional black and white moral values, was a significant contrast to past successful movies. Up to this point, really old groups of studio heads really dictated how movies were made. But Arthur Penn, the director of Bonnie and Clyde, really changed that to it being his own personal imprint. So he's the one who decided to do more detailed themes of sex and violence and put his own personal stamp on the film. And this really opened the doors for other greatest films of all time. Chinatown, which I mentioned earlier, which also had Faye Dunaway. Taxi, The Godfather. I mean, there's a whole list of movies from this era that have super iconic violent scenes that all can point to Bonnie and Clyde as opening the door for them. So all these directors, Coppola, Scorsese, Altman, they all benefited from Arthur Penn taking the risk to make this movie in complete opposition to how films have been made up to this point. So it's the 27th greatest film of all time, according to the American Film Institute. Worth watching. Well, my wife and I really enjoyed it. The acting was all phenomenal, as you expect, but with a movie that's based on historical reality, I mean, I pretty much in general know what happens to Bonnie and Clyde, but as I'm watching the movie, the cast are so good, and there's such an air of unpredictability about what they're going to do next that I felt like I didn't know what was going to happen next, even though I know what happened to Bonnie and Clyde. So the acting is phenomenal, as you would expect. It's that dangerous allure, that unpredictability. You see how they can charm people one minute and then the next blow the brains out of someone else. It's quite sudden and shocking. They were unpredictable in a bad way, and it was really entertaining. As shocking as the violence was to audiences in 1967, I don't think it will be as nearly as shocking to a modern viewer who has yet to see the film. But I think the suddenness of the violence, the way it erupts out of nowhere, and the sheer non-glamorous brutality of the final scene, I think it's pretty unsettling. It's not a cool violence. It's graphic and messy, and it makes an impression. Something I'm taking away and thinking about while watching this movie and making this video is about balancing fact and fiction. I've mentioned a few of these, the least of which was Blanche Barrow, how she was portrayed as a screaming horse's ass in her words, but more so about Clyde's abhorrent experiences in prison just not being mentioned at all, and then Texas Ranger Hamer and how they just totally changed the characters or left the truth out to kind of manipulate how the audience views those real life characters. It completely changes how I saw both men. And it's a good reminder that everything that you see on screen is exactly what the creator wants you to see, and nothing more. So there's a lot to think about there. I'm not going to go into it more than that, but just something to keep in mind. Alright, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, all that, and I will see you in the next video. Here are the Simpsons.
Bert! That car belonged to Bonnie and Clyde. Show a little respect.
Uh-huh.